Good morning, everybody. Week 14, last week before Thanksgiving. Uh, we've really only got one thing to work on, and that is Essay 4, of course. Um, the work for this week is going to build off the work that you did from last week. Last week we talked about communities. Last week we talked about groups of people that we find ourselves a part of that share something approaching a set of interests or values or proximity or likeness of some kind. And the goal of doing that is to find a community that has a concern or an issue or a thing that is pressing upon it, either for better or worse, that we can pivot off of for the sake of finding a topic for Essay 4. And the goal of Essay 4, I feel like I need to stress, because when you are brainstorming about a topic and you think about your opinions on things, I think that most assumption is that this is just a standard position paper where you do some research on a topic. Your thesis is about your opinion on the topic, and the bulk of your essay is merely about showing various ways in which your opinion on the topic is a strong one. But that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is argumentative response. And in many ways, this is the culmination of everything that we've done throughout the semester. But the goal of this essay is to basically, mirror the goal of our very first essay on David Foster Wallace, where the goal was to read what David Foster Wallace said in his speech and internalize it and think about it and make connections. And in that first assignment, the connections were personal. The connections were geared towards supporting your overall opinion of the speech. And this time, the connections that you're making will be between what the core text says and the research that you've done to support your response to it, and to support your contrary position to what the core text says. I will draw your attention to the sample essay, and not just the sample essay, but the article that the sample essay is written in response to. You should start by reading R.R. Reno's Legalizing Drugs. And the goal of reading the essay the first time is, first of all, just let it wash over you and try to gather what the person says and how you feel about it, and maybe to, generate some initial responses. But as you do that, the goal is to go through the text and look for those moments where the author says something, or where the author presents some data, or where the author makes a claim that is open for response, that is open for criticism, that is open potentially for straight up refutation. As you read Reno's article, it's important to bear in mind that Reno's article is an article that exists on a website that is run by a Catholic organization, and basically the Catholic Church, where it is written with Catholic ideals in mind. And be that as it may, for better or worse, that kind of background can help you understand a lot of what Reno is saying, especially when it comes toward the end and he starts talking about, how laws should exist that make us aware of what it means to live an honorable life. And some of the language that Reno uses throughout the essay to describe the issue of whether or not to legalize drugs, and through the proxy of divorce, as you'll see, some of the language that he uses is colored or leaning in a way that may be unclear until you realize that he worries about promiscuous divorce or living an honorable life, and worrying that we're developing an agnostic approach to thinking about what honorable living means. That, well, he's coming from that very specific and narrow religious perspective. But as you read through his article, you'll see him make several points. First of all, you should notice that Reno's article is itself a response to a different article. He's responding to an article that was written by two economists that he names up front, and he summarizes their points. And then he says, they're probably not wrong, but it's still not right to legalize drugs. And then as he moves into his rationale for why, he more or less relies on the proxy discussion of no-fault divorce, where he says, once upon a time, we thought that legalizing divorce would remove a lot of stigma around relationships, and that if we did legalize it, it wouldn't increase the divorce rate by much, and all these claims that the authors of the text he's responding to make. And then he compares that, to divorce, and says that the authors are more or less talking about legalizing drugs. He doesn't specify what drug, but legalizing drugs for largely the same rationale. And he goes through and starts to pick apart those moments. And some of the things that he says are legalizing drugs will really only help the elite, while, lower class people might still find themselves at a disadvantage, and that ultimately legalizing drugs might create more inequity. He makes the claim that alcohol is much more benign. He says that drugs are undeniably harder and more dangerous and more addictive than drugs. He makes a claim about he makes several claims along class lines with regards to the legal system and whatnot, and those are the claims that you'll see as you read the sample essay. That essay is kind of built around. The body of the essay is about engaging specific points that Reno brings up and providing contrary ideas and evidence. It's not always just something citable in research. Sometimes it is something that the author is saying about the thought process, and then coming in with a little bit of research, or sometimes maybe they're redefining what is being discussed in Reno's terms. If you look at the first paragraph, or excuse me, the second body paragraph after the summary, he makes the claim that, when he brings up the idea that Reno says it will just create more inequality through the justice system. And rather than just saying, no, it won't, the author of the essay actually shifts the topic and says, well, if we're talking about inequality, then things are already unequal because of the way our justice system currently works. And then the point being made after that is just how inequitable the current version of the justice system is. And it's still an effective way of arguing. And so, but I want you to also notice, as you read that sample essay, I want you to notice how similar that essay is to the essay that we wrote for David Foster Wallace. The bulk of the essay is, the bulk of the paragraphs begin by just pointing to something that David Foster Wallace has said, and then responding with personal connections, personal feelings about that idea. And more or less, that is how this essay should go. The text that you talk about for the discussion post this week should ultimately be as central to your essay as David Foster Wallace's text was in that first one. So I don't want you to confuse what we're doing. We're not finding an article that is pros and cons and taking a side. We're not finding an article that just provides general information and then building our position on top of it. We are engaging an author on the things that they say. And that's different than just a position paper. We've already written a position paper. The whether or not to push the boulder. That was it. Take a position, research some reasons why your position is the right one, and make your argument. Engage opposition. This essay is about response, and it is about using research to form a coherent counter-argument to something someone else has said. And so I press upon that because if there's ever any way that students tend to go wrong with this assignment, it is that they just turn this into an opportunity to write a position paper. So the goal for this week is to find that source that you are going to respond to and argue against. And that is essentially the only task. If you have difficulty narrowing things down to a topic or finding a specific article to jump off on, I will be available to answer questions or offer feedback. Again, I'll encourage you to check out the Opposing Viewpoints database and the list of issues that may stand out. I'll just remind you again, no politics, no hate speech, no pseudoscience. Within that, you can probably get away with anything that you want. And I look forward to seeing what kind of articles you post about and what kind of articles you find. If I can be of assistance, please let me know. Otherwise, enjoy your week, and I will talk to you soon.